So welcome back to the Agriland tent. A lot of focus recently has been on the current beef prices and the so-called anti-competitive prices between the factories and the farmers. But that's outside of the control of the farmer by the farmers. So I'm joined now by Teagasc Pearse Kelly, just going to give us a little bit of advice, I suppose, what beef farmers can do on the ground. Pearse, Teagasc figures released a couple of weeks ago show that all suckling systems under current beef prices are loss-making, and the figures are bleak. But what can farmers do on the ground, to batten down the hatches, I suppose, and to cut costs?
Yeah, so as you're saying, Niall, current beef prices there, it's even on efficient farms that are doing things very well, things are going to be very tight for the next couple of months. I suppose the worry is there, that we've seen beef prices slipping and falling throughout last year and into this year. And when you talk to the market analysts and that, there's no immediate light at the end of the tunnel to say, listen, we're going to see a turnaround in beef prices in terms of what the market can deliver. And that, so in that situation, as a beef farmer, then you really need to say, well, okay, I'm not making a huge amount of money out of this, or I might actually be in a situation where I'm actually losing money. So what you don't want to do is dig the hole any deeper. Normally, at the ploughing, at farm walks, at discussion groups and that, we'd be telling people, to make money, you need to drive on, you need to drive output, you need to spend money to make money. But in a situation where the beef price isn't matching production costs, it's actually the opposite of what people need to be doing. It's not something you'll do forever because you'll run your farm down and that, but what you really need to be looking at is where can I cut costs? Look at absolutely everything. In terms of what are and we're not even just saying critical costs here. Look at things that you'd normally do, things that you were planning to spend money on, and say, do I really need to spend that money this year? Can I get away without spending that money? Can I save that money? Is there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 can be saved there that I would have made on the beef price? And I can spend that money in 12 months' time or 18 months' time when there's a turnaround in the beef price.
Yeah, so I suppose, Pearse, cutting meal wherever you can cut meal, getting more out of grass. Do you know what I mean? Maybe soil fertility and reseeding.
Yeah, so there's a number of areas, Niall. So the meal one is probably the obvious one that a lot of people. Now, you can only go so far on the meal one too because, the meal one really depends on the quality of the silage you have and what you're trying to finish. Like if you have cattle going into a shed and they're being finished, there's not an awful lot you can do there, okay? But if you haven't made the decision maybe to finish those cattle and you have the capacity maybe to turn those cattle back out to grass next spring and you have the stocking rate to allow you to do that, well then, yeah, this is probably the year to say, no, listen, I won't push on those cattle. I won't have a big meal bill at the end of the year, and I'll save money there. And that's really, but I mean, if you're looking at, say, feeding weanlings and you only have average enough quality silage, you're still going to have to feed a certain amount of meal on that. So the meal one, yeah, you can in places do it, but there's other areas, kind of like soil fertility for 2020 is a big one. Again, you go over on our stand there, we're talking about, the importance of P and K and lime. Lime, because it's probably really good value, you probably still would. But you'd even question that. So you'd really say, P's and K's maybe put out with a bag of 18-6-12 at the start of the year and straight nitrogen, protected urea after that. Things like that is where you make, and they can be big enough, reseeding is another one. Again, this is the time of the year, well, I suppose it's probably gone a little bit past reseeding now, but you have a lot of people talking about maybe reseeding next spring. Reseeding is expensive. It's worth doing when there's money to be made, but, reseeding 10 acres could cost you €3,500. That's €3,500 to save.
Yeah. And I suppose it goes without saying, Pearse, no investments in machinery or stock or anything.
This is the thing, yeah. If you're looking at investing in machinery, and you might say, okay, listen, the machinery there, that it's costing me more. Listen, stand back, look at it. Would repairing that machinery, holding over it for another year. We see a lot of people, and we're hearing this already, contractors are telling us, planned jobs on farms are being cut. And that's absolutely the right message that we're saying to people. If you were planning on maybe upgrading a handling facility or buying new gates or upgrading a shed or things like that, by all means do that in the future. But for the next 6 to 12 months when the beef price is at it, it's really cut costs wherever you can.
Pearse, we're in the middle of autumn now, winning sales are going on, with the special sales. If I'm a beef farmer, and I have my bulls and my heifers to sell, is there any value maybe in holding on to those weanlings and selling them next spring?
Yeah, so as you say, Niall, we're moving into the real weanling sales now, and it's really hard seeing people taking the prices that they're getting because that's all the people who are buying them can afford to, based on what their expected beef price is. We have people there who typically we're getting $2.30, $2.40 for their average weanlings are now being offered €2 a kilo. And that's the question they're asking. They're saying, listen, geez, I'm only being offered €2 a kilo. Would I be better holding over those weanlings, feeding them over the winter, and look to make more on them in the spring? Without going into all the figures, the big thing there is you're going to have to feed them silage, you're going to have to feed them meal, they're going to have to be health, there's going to be vet issues, there's these fixed costs as well in terms of the feeding, there's labour, there's management. And, when we looked at that there a couple of weeks ago, taking a 350 kilo weanling now, putting on 90 kilos on that weanling and selling them in March, the difference between selling them now for €2, you'd want to be getting €2.20 in the spring. And that's really only to make 30, 40 euro on that weanling. So what you have to ask yourself is, would I get the extra 20 cent per kilo? And that's presuming you will put on 90 kilos over the winter. The other big thing what we say to people is, do you have the shed space to do this? Yeah. Do you have the silage to do this? If you've suckler cows and you're in the business normally of selling the weanlings in the autumn, and now you hold on to a whole batch of weanlings, that does put the whole system under pressure. And you're now feeding silage that maybe other stock we're going to get. You're now taking up shed space. Ventilation could be an issue. It puts you under pressure, puts the whole system under pressure. When you're calving cows, you're feeding these weanlings, and that you could have extra calf losses next spring. So for the most part, what we're saying to people really is you're probably still better sticking to the system where you are at the moment. By all means, unfortunately, take the lower price, but you'd want to be getting a significantly higher price, and I mean a significantly higher price next March, April, and presume the cattle have put on a reasonable amount of weight to make a modest enough margin on those weanlings between now and then.
Yeah. James Madigan was supposed to be with us, but he just got held up. Do you know what I mean? He's a County Kilkenny farmer. He's a progressive suckler to beef farmer. He gets some of his bulls away at 14 months, the rest of them under 16 months, getting his heifers away at 18 to 22 months, doing all the things right. He said he's not going to move away from the bull system. Do you know what I mean? Like, they are profitable if you're set up for it. What's the advice around that, Pearse?
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's been on James's farm there, he was in our Better Farm program in the last phase of it. He was in it there for 3 or 4 years. He really brought the farm on, and James moved at that stage from a steer finishing system to a under 16-month bull finishing system. And the under 16-month bull system was really top class for people who could operate it. They could even on wettish type land, you could house a strong weanling this time of the year or a little bit later than now. You could feed them on really good quality silage. And what a lot of people like James are doing, and James is planning on continuing doing, is that they use the surplus bales off paddocks throughout the year, which are really high quality silage to cut down the meal bill. And get out of really good carcass weights for age. They were getting them on the grid, they were getting the price and that. And to be fair to James, it's very hard for him then to stand back and say, well, I'm going to move from that really efficient system and move back towards a steer system. And I 100% see why he's saying that. The only advice, I suppose, that we're saying to people is, by all means, do that. But talk to your processor, talk to where you're trying to sell these bulls into. What is the spec that they're looking for? Because you need some little bit of reassurance from the processor that they're going to take these animals at that spec, at that weight down the road. And that, but it's hard. It's a very efficient system, and really to move back to a steer system. And we've been saying this for years. For someone that's selling under 16-month bulls at any stage to move back to selling steers, they'd really want to be getting a significant premium on the steers over the bulls. So if that premium's not there, you could 100% understand why James is saying, I'm going to stick with the bulls.
Yeah, and his system is set up for the bulls and it's hard to switch back.
It is. And once you switch back, you have to have an awful lot more extra housing for those bullocks to keep them over a second winter. There's a lot more costs involved in that as well. So, but the only thing I go back and say is, as we've always said over the years with bulls, is you do need to talk to a processor. Yeah. I know times are tough at the moment and there's maybe not be a great relationship with processors, but you do need, if you want to continue in the bull one, you need to have a good relationship there.
Yeah. Pearse, do you know what I mean? It's been a hectic couple of weeks in the beef side of things. Now that I have you here, just after the deal that was made on Sunday, is that a good deal for farmers?
Listen, the situation at the moment is that, okay, the deal was done. All the farm organisations were there. We ourselves were represented there. Board B was there. Like any deal, what people will tell you is you don't get everything you want in it. I suppose what we're hearing on the ground now is that, people who have cattle to kill, people who have, I suppose, probably not said an awful lot up to now, they have cattle to kill. Those cattle are going over 30 months of stage. With all the main organisations behind the deal, we're moving into a time now where cattle need to move on. our advice really for a lot of people is that, if the thing could move on at all, it's going to ease up, because a lot of pressure is coming on those farmers from a cash flow point of view, not only a cash flow purely from a living point of view, but a cash flow to be able to go out and buy weanlings and buy stores. And as we move into that market now, we need those people who have cattle to sell to come back into the market. So our hope would be that the thing will move on, and that people will see the positives in this deal. And and that's really what you're looking for. What are the positives? What are the things we can work on and move forward with that?
Yeah, finally, Pearse, in that agreement, it states that Teagasc will have a go at reviewing the grid. Can you give us an insight how that will come about?
Okay, so Teagasc back 10 years ago was instrumental in terms of looking at the science behind the grid. And that was our role that we did 10 years ago. It would have been work that Michael Drennan, who has since retired, did. So he looked at 400, 500, 600 carcasses. He looked at dissecting those carcasses down into the different meat yields. So you break it down into all the different retail cuts that are there. What we do with that, and we still have that data. So carcasses haven't changed. So a U grade versus an R grade versus an O grade won't have changed significantly. So what we've been asked to do initially is to take the data that Michael has, and we still have that data, and to use current beef prices, current retail prices, that the current prices that the processors are getting for the different retail cuts, and put that back into the formula, if you like, and see, well, what does that do to the grid? At the moment, there's a 6 cent per kilo difference between the 15-point scales as you move more or less from one to the other. Okay, there's some higher differences below. But what we're being asked is that 6 cent per kilo still relevant? Because what you have to remember is when we did these calculations back 10 years ago, the beef price then was a lot lower than it is today. We don't know what the beef price is at a processor level now compared to 10 years ago. So when we get that data from the meat industry, and the meat industry have told us they're going to supply us with that data in the next number of weeks, we can very quickly do that calculation on. And then it's really up to the industry then to take that information. We'll do the science. It's up to the industry then to negotiate if there is going to be changes to the grid.
Well, look, there's plenty of advice there for beef farmers, and no doubt we'll be hearing more about the grid in the next couple of weeks. So thanks very much for joining us, Pearse, and stay tuned for more.